Monster. Anything with goblins. I'm going to be very honest. I'm a little bit traumatized from Goblin Slayer. If you know what I mean, then you know. So the fact that I had to give goblins like a second chance and just kind of look at this and just be like, it's a different story. This particular one, the storyline pretty much follows this isekai format. This guy from a different world, he passes away, technically he was murdered, and he gets isekai'd into this other fantasy world where he is reincarnated as a goblin, which granted is probably one of the worst creatures you want to be reincarnated as. So now he does have to like work his way up, which I really enjoy. I love when they have those concepts about like going from nothing to very powerful. He doesn't just become powerful. He's not given all these gifts. He just has like the typical isekai things where he'll have status updates and leveling up. So those are really good. You know, we get to see like where he's going and how many levels he has to go through before he becomes the next leveled up creature. He has to gain all these abilities. It's really interesting how he gains his abilities by eating these other animals, creatures, and all kinds. Even some items he eats and he gets abilities from them. Typical goblins. There's those trigger warnings in there. Is it in here? No. There's a little bit things in the beginning like the women that are captured because goblins are very known to. They capture women and they use them to make their babies. Not willingly. We do get a glimpse of that in like the first episode or so, and I like the fact that it's not something that becomes a major aspect of it, like Goblin Slayer really traumatizes you from the first episode out, right? That thing's a big old trigger warning. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't going to be like goblin stuff going on where they're like gonna want to. They're very sexualized a little bit, not that much, honestly. It is more of a focus on developing these goblins to have more intellectual aspects, growing into like a whole society and having a civilization rather than just living in a little hole in a tree or a cave per se. This guy comes from his other world, which apparently he had the same ability of eating things and gaining those abilities from it. I'm not sure what world he comes from, but it definitely doesn't look like the typical Japan. It is more of a futuristic Japan, a little bit more different. So we're not looking at someone taken from like a normal society anyways into this other one. Now, it is interesting how he quickly adapts. Like, he really adapts fast to this world, and he's not squeamish. He's like eating everything that is given to him. Bugs, eating other raw creatures. There's no cooking meat in this aspect. He's just eating them straight up, just as is, to get the abilities from them and to level up as fast as he can so that he becomes the strongest and the leader of this whole entire group. Now, the interesting stuff that I do find in here that's a little bit like meh, which is like a lot of the harem. So every female that pretty much comes into here, he sleeps with them. It's like this weird thing that they make where he's like this ultimate attraction to them, and it just kind of seems weird where it's just like they offer themselves up so willingly to him. It's interesting. I mean, he treats them all pretty nicely and fair. He's not necessarily like throwing himself on them and forcing them, really. So I will have to say, like, that's one thing I wish that they would have done a little bit different, made him just like not with that many women. But I get it, it's a harem and they're supposed to have like all these women. They're all like technically his women, but then at one point we find out one of them, not to give too much away, she becomes like a higher goblin, and then she mentions that now she's officially his wife, which I thought they were all his wives honestly, but I guess they weren't. Now, really, is it a make or break? No, it's not. It has a good story. It was really interesting the way it was done. There are some things that weren't really addressed, I feel, that should have been. Like this old character in the beginning. Like, what if they would have helped him to level up, even though he was at an old age of 27, 26, around there? Like, what if they would have helped him to level up? Would he have become young again? Or would he have become like an older, other leveled up creature? Like, I kind of felt like they could have developed on that a little bit more and made him into another prominent, because he seemed to have relied on him quite a bit for a lot of things in this world for information, for him to not really get a lot of level up. He just kind of stayed the same, or he didn't even like help him to level up. Maybe it would have been for the best, because he was kind of a little pervy man. So maybe for the best that he did not level up, because that would have been a nightmare for our main character to have to like off him. Now, I'm not saying the main character's name for a reason, because his name does change quite a lot throughout it, which I feel like is confusing. I would say that that was one of my least favorite parts of the series, only for keeping track of who's who in conversations. Anytime anyone in the group leveled up to another being, they would get a new name until they reached a point where they would have a real name. And then they would get a nickname from that real name because there's a power in that name. I feel like that was just a little confusing to keep changing their name, especially with our MC2. He kept on getting his name changed as well. I wish they would have just kept everybody with one name. That would have been so much easier. Like when in that time I got reincarnated as a slime, how Rimuru gives everyone just one name and that is their name. If they had a name before and he gives them a new one, like that's just their name. That they stay with that name for the rest of the whole entire series. That's something I would say was just more of a personal thing. Maybe no one else feels like that was a confusion. I thought it was confusing to have them change their names so often. I do love the fact that the main character with their friend who they like were born at the same time and they help each other to level up. I really thought that so many times that they were going to be like rivalries in the way that they were going to fight and then separate. And I was like, please don't separate, because I like the way that they like have that brotherly bond with each other. It was just nice. And I just was hoping it was going to be like the typical storyline of something happens, you know, the friend becomes jealous because he's becoming so powerful, so then he just wants to leave and start his own kind of group. But I love the fact that they keep together, and it's more like, yeah, he gets more frustrated in the sense that he wants to become powerful because he doesn't want to get left behind from the main character developing and becoming stronger and keeps leveling up. And he's just like, I want to level up too because I want to be your number one rival and stand on equal with you. I love the whole part that they keep that in there, and it's not like forced to make them hate each other and fight, and that becomes like a whole entire arc and a theme or whatever. And then the only way to resolve it is obviously the rivalry has to get in a way. I'm glad that that wasn't the case. Now let's touch base on a couple of things here, like the drawing style. Very typical. Wouldn't say there was anything amazing about like the drawing. It was kind of similar to a lot of other animes, honestly. The design of the characters was also very typical to what goblins were. So I would say those were just interesting, common, nothing to rave about or like want a screenshot and keep it for inspiration. But was it necessary? No. Now, will I drop this anime? No. But I liked it. Wasn't something I would say I'd love it to like rewatch it. If season 2 came out for it, will I watch it? Yes. I think definitely it's worth continuing the series and watching if a season 2 were to come out. Would I read the manga for it? Personally, no. I don't think it's interesting enough or leaves me wanting to know more of what's going to happen next right now. Like, it's not a rush for me to want to read it to know what's going to happen now. I can definitely wait for season 2 to come out, and reading the manga doesn't really call my interest currently. Do I have a favorite character in the whole thing? No. The main character seems to be our most interesting of them all. I wouldn't say I would pick anyone to be my favorite. Do I have any favorite parts? Just the leveling up. I just love the whole leveling up aspect of it. Every time he, you know, really struggled against creatures, he was like losing limbs and fighting hard. And sometimes he would be gone for like days away from his group just to level up and fight these strong creatures. So I like the fact that it's not just like one moment to another he's leveling up. Like, he really is going through it, and we can see that progress, which I like and enjoy very much. Basically, that's just my opinion about it. If you guys have read the manga for this one, let me know what you think about it. Compare it to the anime if you have watched the anime as well. If you've watched the anime, tell me what you thought about it, and if you agree with my opinions or you have a completely different take on it. I love to hear what everybody has to say and their opinions on it as well.